Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second virtual speakers series on movement disorders, our first as the UHN Foundation. As many of you know, Toronto General and Western Hospital Foundation amalgamated with Toronto Rehab Foundation on April 1st. So we welcome our repeat and new viewers to the UHN community. I'm Christian Coté, host of the UHN podcast Behind the Breakthrough. We're grateful to you, our family of supporters, for joining us today. And we want to give special credit to Mr. Fraser Barrow. This speaker series event is being made possible because of his remarkable generosity. He's a shining light for his continued support. So thank you, Mr. Barrow. Today, we're introducing a pioneering new addition to the world-class care at UHN, one that will transform patient involvement in their own care. It all centers around the creation of a patient advisory board at the Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorders Clinic. To help us understand the genesis of the Patient Advisory Board and the role it plays, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Anthony Lang. Dr. Lang is director of the Edmund J. Safra Program in Parkinson's disease, the Morton and Gloria Shulman Movement Disorders Clinic, and the Rossi Progressive Nuclear Palsy Center. Welcome, Dr. Lang.
Hi, Christian.
Nice to have you. And back with us again, Dr. Sarah Lidstone, a neurologist, director of UHN's Integrated Movement Disorders Program, and a clinician investigator at the Krembil Research Institute. Dr. Lidstone was the keynote speaker at our first virtual speaker series. Welcome, Dr. Lidstone.
Hi, Christian. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
For those of you who may have missed it, the video of Dr. Lidstone's presentation can be found on the UHN Foundation's YouTube channel, but wait until after this particular live stream and you can go check it out. We're also pleased to have on the broadcast today here three members of the new Patient Advisory Board of Toronto Western's Movement Disorders Clinic. There's Hugh Johnston, chair of the Patient Advisory Board. Hi, Hugh.
How you doing today? Looking forward to this.
Me too. Also here today is the board co-chair, Dr. Sonia Mather. Welcome, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
And we have Gordon Myers, chair of communications for the board. Welcome, Gordon.
Thank you, Christian. Glad to be here.
In addition, for you in the audience, we want you to participate in today's conversation as well. So as you're watching the live stream and you hear from the presenters, if a question comes to mind, please send it in. And you can do so by going to Slido, and that should be at the bottom of your screen now. Click on that link, then type in the event code, and that should be also at the bottom of the screen. The link is #MDS series, and enter your question. And please keep in mind, for privacy reasons, we won't be able to answer any questions of a personal nature, and we'll get to your questions a little later in the live stream. Okay, so let's start with Dr. Lang. The Morton and Gloria Shulman Movement Disorders Clinic. Last month was the 1-year anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic. Talk to us about the impact of the pandemic and how the clinic has adapted to be able to continue serving patients.
Well, thanks, Christian. Again, welcome, everybody. Thanks for your support and your involvement for these great speaker series. COVID has really changed everything. I think up until this week, I was ready to tell you that we were getting up and running again, that we were increasing the number of live patients that we were seeing in the clinic. And as you probably know, with the terrible situation we're in now, we've cut right back. We are not seeing anybody but the most urgent patients live. But as with all clinics, we are really adapting to so-called virtual reality. Like these sessions, our patient care is virtual. Our phone calls, Ontario Telehealth, with Zoom, and a variety of other ways of dealing with the problems I think, have been successful. We'd really prefer to see all of you live, to touch you, to interact with you, and to really enjoy your company, because your doctors really have a very important and good relationship with our patients. And we kind of miss that when we're looking at a television screen, but we'll do the best we can. And I think hopefully over the next little while, things will get a lot better. And I hope that everybody watching and participating has been vaccinated or is lining up for vaccination. Please get it. If you're afraid of it, get it anyway. The consequences are much worse than any of the very rare side effects that the vaccinations can cause. So on that note, I'm now going to introduce my colleague. You heard her introduced earlier, Sarah Lidstone. Dr. Lidstone and Dr. Naomi Visanji were instrumental in getting this wonderful patient advisory board off the ground. I think you'll be very excited to hear from the members, and I'll ask Sarah to introduce the program.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Lang. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. I really love these events, being able to reach out and connect with our patients and our community and explain a little bit about what we're up to and things that we're working on. My role here today really is to give a bit of background and then introduce our patient advisory board, which is the main event. This is what you're all here to hear about. But just from a little kind of background on the provider side. So this patient advisory board was conceived in the summer of 2019, so right before COVID hit, unfortunately. And this bore out of a desire to really involve our patients in a meaningful way in how we do business, in our clinic, in our research processes, and how we communicate with patients. And when I was brought on, this was already a bit in discussion with the rest of the faculty. And then my colleague Naomi and I took it and kind of ran with it. And really we're fortunate to be able to put together a group of 14 really amazing individuals, both care partners and patients, as well as many members of the faculty and our allied health team, because we all feel that we can make a contribution together and collaborate together. And really our reason for doing this is that it was very important to us to involve the patient voice directly from the very beginning in how we actually design models, how we build clinics, not just asking for a blessing or an opinion at the end of having already done something. It's really important to incorporate the ideas from the very beginning and co-build these models together. And so this is what we're working on now, patients truly as partners and not a tokenistic involvement. So the individuals you'll be hearing from today are extremely accomplished in their own right. Our board is made up of business leaders, technology leaders, artists, journalists with all very compelling backgrounds who bring a really diverse skill set to these meetings and a diversity in perspectives. And this is truly how you innovate, actually, is bringing these different ideas and people together. And it causes challenges. We've had to learn how to work together. We've had to figure this out in a trial and error basis as we've gone through it, and it gets dirty sometimes, but this is the work, and this is what's interesting. And I think I could speak for all the faculty when I say this is very rewarding for us as faculty. It's really opened up a whole other aspect to our clinical care that we find so important and so rewarding and so enjoyable. So with that in mind, I will introduce Hugh Johnston. So Hugh is our illustrious board chair. Hugh is a patient himself. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at age 55 after having symptoms that were prodromal for 20 years before that. Hugh, over the last year and a half I've gotten to know him, is an incredibly committed, dedicated individual. His enthusiasm is contagious. You'll hear when he speaks. He has an endless curiosity for all things related to movement disorders. And I think that also extends to people. He really wants to get to know people. And he has done a tremendous job as our chair, basically kind of building this from the ground up. Actually, it's a really, really hard job. His collaborative nature has been exceptional. So Hugh, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll rejoin for the Q&A afterwards. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. Off you go to the clinic. So why do we have a patient advisory board at Toronto Western Hospital? These are the world leaders in movement disorders. What do they need to know from a bunch of patients and family members? What can they do with them? Well, the faculty at Toronto Western wanted people with a diverse experience, people who were patients and family members who brought not only lived experience in neurological disorders, but also brought a broad base of skills and know-how in areas that people at the Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorder Center aren't particularly good at. I bring something, Gort brings something, Sonia brings something. We have people on this board that bring skills that you don't have the money to, when you're taking care of patients, to invest in those. And these people bring those skills to the table, and they love working with faculty to bring them to bear, to help faculty get the results that they want. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the secret sauce as I speak very quickly, but the secret sauce that made this board work and why it got so much done in its very first year was the humility of the faculty and their want to speak to patients and family members, knowing that they actually could make changes to whatever they were doing, whether it was in clinical innovation, whether it was in research, whether it was in communication and education to their patients. They wanted to be able to tap into the patient voice and the family voice so that they could get better results. And not just in a way where you take the thoughts of one and the thoughts of another and put them together and 2 + 2 = 4. It's integrated thinking and a back and forth, and where you end up with 7, 8, 9, or 10. So with that said, what are the things that we got done? Well, there's the list of them there. Achievements for the first year, and the Patient Advisory Board is going to focus this coming year on reaching a larger number of our Movement Disorder Center patients. We've already reached easily half of them with our newsletter, and it's not a newsletter. It's full of information that's actionable and people can use right now. Our Research Advisory Committee is going to focus on increasing participation in research, not just by asking people or signing people up, but actually talking to people and answering the family members' questions and the patients' questions. What's it like to be involved in research, and how does this work, and am I going to be okay? And any question that they have from people with real lived experience in being involved in research. And then finally, the Integrated Movement Disorders Program. And this is something I'm very, very excited about. One of the things that we don't know in Toronto is how good our Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorder Center is. We really don't know how high up is up and what can be done. And I'll tell you, the advocates around the world, because this board is about advisory and advising the clinic in what the clinic needs, not advocacy. So Sonia and we do all sorts of advocacy stuff too, but those advocates know who Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorders Center is, the clinic, and they tell you that this is the top of the peak of the top. If I go to a conference somewhere where there's leading doctors, there may be 2 from any one of the given hospitals. There's 6 from Toronto Western Hospital. It's really amazing. And Sarah and Tony and the team are really working on something that's going to be able to not only rehab Parkinson's disease along with the neuropsychiatric things that happen associated with it, but also we're going to work on a strategy to get that out into the community in developing a hub and spoke model so that we can actually not just have this great service and therapy that works in ways that people aren't getting right now, but that we actually get it out there so that everyone can use it. I'm going to hand it over to Sonia now, who I met actually at a Toronto Western Hospital conference on revision versus reconstruction. And it was my distinct pleasure to meet her there. And it's really an honor to work with her and to also work with Gord, who'll come next. Sonia?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a true pleasure to be with you today and have this opportunity to speak. I just want to tell you a little bit about my story. It began over 22 years ago when I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease. I was finishing a residency in family medicine and expecting my first daughter at the time. And what started out as a tremor in my right pinky finger soon became much more constant and concerning. After seeing my local neurologist, I was referred to the Movement Disorder Center at Toronto Western, and it was actually Dr. Lang who broke the news. He confirmed my diagnosis, young onset Parkinson's disease at 28, as unprepared as I was to receive it at that time. But it is also due to his excellent care over the years and his skill, knowledge, and expertise that in large part, I'm here with you today. It's also due to the exemplary care and innovative research being done here at Toronto Western that cemented my commitment to working as part of this patient advisory board. I don't need to tell you, I know you all know this disease is quite pervasive. It affects us physically, emotionally, mentally, the whole family is affected. And it also causes your life to take a different trajectory, as unwilling as you may be. That was my case. I ran a busy medical practice for about 12 years, but that combined with raising 3 young daughters, not having time for self-care, my declining health was significantly impacting my quality of life and my functioning. So I decided to retire from clinical practice and instead devote my time to my family, of course, my health, and direct my efforts towards patient advocacy, education, and empowerment. I'd be lying to say that the last 22 years have been easy. It's definitely been a time of challenges and obstacles, but it's also been a time of learning. I've learned from being involved in this community. I've learned about what the Parkinson's community needs are, and I've learned about the incredible work that has already been done and the hard work that's left to do. And what I've found is that there are 2 parallel tracks in the Parkinson's landscape. First is a search for better treatments and ultimately a cure. And part of my advocacy work is engaging the patient community in clinical trials and emphasizing the importance of the patient voice in all aspects of research, from the direction of research based on community needs to study design, recruitment, retention, and then the dissemination of that information following the study's completion. So there's that one track of clinical research. And the other track is that until there's a cure or a disease-modifying treatment, it's all about quality of life for patients. And we are not islands unto ourselves as patients. As patients, we do best when we're surrounded by a team of healthcare providers that have our quality of life in mind. And much of that quality of life for patients can be improved by addressing some of the non-motor symptoms. You mentioned neuropsychiatric health, that's very important, and rehabilitation programs, which both really tend to be underfunded. So keeping these 2 tracks in mind as a physician, I chose over the years to align myself with organizations that I felt were patient-centric in their approach to clinical care, community support, and improving quality of life, or patient-centric in their approach to research. And I work with a number of North American and international organizations on their boards or committees, from the Fox Foundation to Davis Phinney to World Parkinson Coalition, Brian Grant Foundation, Cure Parkinson's Trust, Parkinson Canada, PD Avengers. So life has obviously been busy. But when I was approached to join the Toronto Western Patient Advisory Board, I recognized that not only was it my center of care that I wanted to give back to and that I was very familiar with, but their mission encompassed both of those tracks that I mentioned. This group of clinicians and staff are very patient-centric in their focus, both when it comes to care or research. And here as a patient advisory board, we can help affect change. We can influence change. We can bring the patient's viewpoint and needs to the table, knowing that we will be heard and the patient's needs will be heard. Here, involving patients is not tokenistic. Here, involving patients really matters. And on that note, I'd like to turn it back to Christian.
Thanks so much, Sonia, for that passionate sort of treatise on what motivated you to become a part of the Patient Advisory Board. Quick programming note, just to remind you out there, as you're listening to our speakers today, if a question comes to mind, we want to hear from you. We'd like to have you become part of the conversation. So go to the Slido page, the link's at the bottom of this live stream window, type in the event code, that's hashtag MDS series, and send us your question. Remember, nothing of a personal medical nature. All right, let's move on to Gordon Myers. He's the chair of communications for the Mood Disorders Clinic Patient Advisory Board. Gordon, tell us about your reasons for getting involved and what you'll be doing as chair of communications.
Thank you, Christian. Well, first of all, I think it was W.C. Fields who never wanting to be upstaged said, "I never work with kids or dogs." I think I should add Sonia Mather's name to that list because she's a tough act to follow. But anyway, an eloquent, inspirational speaker. Sonia is an asset, an endless resource as a member of the PAB. And Hugh Johnston, our voice, who carefully keeps us on track and true to the mission statement, focused on what needs to be done to affect real change. The UHN-MBC is a world leader in the study and treatment of movement disorders. So we, as the advisory board, don't take our role lightly. How did I get here? Quickly, it won't take long. In 1976, I moved from Halifax to Toronto. I'm a musician. I wanted to study music at Humber and later York University. I'd teach at both those places eventually. Playing and teaching music, that's what I did. I made my living playing the trombone. I have an understanding wife, supportive, and we got married in 1993. 2008, fast forward, we bought our house, and that was when the first signs of Parkinson's appeared. Two years later, 2010, was a diagnosis, but I knew something was wrong. There was a tremor and the mask, my face was changed forever. I was probably a little depressed at the time, but I turned to exercise as my tonic. So between my biannual visits to see my neurologist, I do progressive resistance training. I did the One Step Ahead LSVT program at One Step Ahead, a physiotherapist in town. Long dog walks, and I joined a support group at Parkinson Canada. I eventually became a facilitator of one. I still do that, but I would also I'd hear about events, Parkinson's related events, through that source, and it was through listening to Sonia speak a few times. Ben Stetcher was also a board member. That I found it so inspiring that these young people were kind of taking charge and for the cause that affected me. So that's why and how I kind of got involved. I'd like to just sort of give a sample of what we've done in this first year as a patients advisory board. The research end of things. Excuse me. Research end. We updated the brain donor patient handout. Linda Redford, one of the other board members, put it in language that lay people could understand and less medical speak. Clinical Trials 101, a PowerPoint presentation to essentially encourage people to take part in clinical studies and trials. We got that going, and it's been on the shelf a little bit as our patient ambassador program has been, but they're going to be activated soon because COVID days are numbered. I'm sure of it. The newsletter, our communications. Sorry, let me backtrack just a second. Hugh and I thought that we should have a communications committee, which is a clearer way to communicate, so we could communicate with the patient body at the Movement Disorder Clinic. And Linda Redford again was all over the communication plan. The two pillars of the communication plan are the newsletter and the website. The newsletter, we just had our second edition, came out 2 weeks ago, the spring edition. We provided the input and often a lot of content for Julie Retsiopa, our staff education and communications lead, and she compiled a beautiful newsletter. It's fantastic. We're very proud of it. 55% of the patients at MDC have received it and through email, and there's more each time. I think it was 372 more received the spring edition over the winter edition. It's growing, and it's a great resource. And it's if you're interested in having it and want it, you should reach your neurologist or the clinic, the admin staff, the clinic, and get on the email list. The website. The website isn't up and running yet, but we're hard at work at it again. It was kind of again delayed by COVID and various things, but we're hoping to have it launched by or before June 14th. Fingers crossed, and it will kind of bring everything together. Thanks so much to Linda again, Murray Boyce, Melinda Davis, Peter Gilly, and Harry Forrest, all the other members of the communications committee. It's been a great experience doing this. I see it as a jump or a leap from volunteerism and fundraising to patient advocacy and influence. As patients, being involved is not only personally uplifting, but it's empowering. And it doesn't hurt that we have a faculty that takes particular interest in this board and what it has to offer, and is open and honest with advice, compliments, and criticism. They come to the meetings, people. They actually come to the meetings and they participate. Credit to Dr. Lang, Lidstone, and Basanji for establishing a positive environment based on mutual respect. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gordon, for being such a strong supporter of the clinic and the well-being of patients. All right, we've heard from our speakers. Time for you in the audience to chime in. We want to go to our audience questions that have been coming in on Slido. If we can pop that up. And let's go to our first question. I'm curious about the doctor's opinions on how the COVID pandemic will influence and affect patient care in the coming years, especially in your medical field. Dr. Lang, can I ask you to field that one?
Sure. I think all of us have recognized that COVID forced a change in the way we communicate with the patients and manage from a distance in some very good ways. As I mentioned earlier, it means that we have more virtual care, more ability to care for patients from a long distance away and save them the trouble, the hassle, the time, and the cost of coming downtown Toronto or traveling all the way down to downtown Toronto to see their physician in a follow-up visit. So in those respects, it's helped a great deal. I think it expands what we can do. I don't think we want it to completely replace the personal care, as I was mentioning before. I think we all feel very strongly that there's a human connection that is very much a part of the care that neurologists provide movement disorders patients. Many of our patients have illnesses, unfortunately, that we are not curing. And so it's a long-term relationship that we establish with our patients. We get to know them, and in many cases, there's a very nice personal relationship. And I think the speaking to a computer detracts from that somewhat as well. So I think there are pros and cons, as I mentioned. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is the role that this is going to play in research. And I think ourselves, many companies that are developing drugs and planning on research studies are all looking at ways that they can evaluate patients in a way that doesn't require constantly returning to the clinic for a live assessment. So things are changing in some ways for the good, some ways we wish it were better.
Thanks, Dr. Lang. Next question. Can you talk about the process on how to become a member of the Patient Advisory Board, and how long does one serve as a board member? Hugh, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'd love to take that one. Right now, we are actively looking for people who would like to be Patient Advisory Board ambassadors to work directly with one of the three committees on either clinical innovation with the Integrated Movement Disorders Program, on research that's chaired by Sonia, or communications and education that's chaired by Gord. And so you can connect with me directly. My email address is Hugh Johnston, CA, all one word, at simpatico.ca, or you could talk to your clinician, which is somebody we'll need to talk to as well, because we do all of this through the clinicians at the clinic. And we're really looking to get people involved. How long does somebody stay on? They stay on as long as they are, looking to contribute, making a great active contribution, and it's something that they're really enjoying doing. And so there are no timelines per se. It's what you can do and what's available to you. So it's not a big, well, gee, if you sign up, here you go, you're signing. No, it's not that. This is about faculty who want to talk to you and find out what you think, because they actually want to change something based on what you say.
Terrific. Thanks, Hugh. Next question. My dad went through a very stressful time shortly before he began to show symptoms of Parkinson's. Does acute stress cause Parkinson's? Dr. Lang?
A short answer is no. It's important to recognize that, and I believe Dr. Lidstone may have even mentioned with respect to Hugh that he had what we often call prodromal symptoms for some time before the features became overt. We recognize Parkinson's disease exists in the brain and in many cases outside the brain and other parts of the body for many years or decades before the patient presents with the tremor, the slowness, or other features. We also know that stress can trigger or precipitate the awareness of symptoms. There's a classical animal study that you might be interested in, where a very famous researcher by the name of Michael Zygmunt from Pittsburgh took rats, I believe they were rats, not mice, and made them dopamine deficient. You all know the importance of dopamine in Parkinson's. And these rats had 90% or more dopamine loss in their brains by a toxin, doesn't really matter the details. The rats recovered completely. And if you looked at the rats roaming around in their cages, you couldn't tell that there was anything wrong with them. He then put the rats into a stressful environment, and sure enough, the rats became symptomatic immediately. So they were very severely dopamine deficient, but looked normal. And it was the stress that then triggered the awareness of the symptoms. So I think that's likely what happened to this individual's father. The disease probably was there to begin with, but then the stress triggered his awareness.
All right, next question. Are there research projects requiring volunteers related to controlling microglia for their effects on PD? I'll put, yeah, Dr. Lang, I think you make the most sense.
I guess I can ask that. There are no specific treatments that are designed right now to reduce what are called activated microglia. Microglia are a very important cell in the brain that serves in an inflammatory fashion. So inflammation in the brain, these are resident cells in the brain that are involved in inflammatory responses. There are drugs that are designed to reduce the action of activated microglia. There is actually one study going on in another movement disorder known as multiple system atrophy that is being conducted in the United States. There aren't other specific drugs currently that are working on microglia, but it's an interesting area that is actively being pursued by a number of researchers as well as a number of companies that have drugs that may have an impact on that.
All right, back to the Patient Advisory Board. Could you go into a bit more detail about some of the achievements of the PAB over the last year and where you hope to go next? Who wants to take that one?
I'll take it, and Sonia, Gord, jump in if you like. Our Gord's team in particular was very busy updating our new patient binders. We launched a Facebook site for our patient advisory board for our patients, and we launched our newsletter. And the newsletter is fascinating because not only did it reach already half of our patients, but almost all of them opened the newsletter to see what was in there, which is an unheard of engagement rate. We developed user-friendly clinical trials list because what we had wasn't very patient or family friendly. And Gord was involved, in developing something called Clinical Trials 101. Involving Sonia and Gord to get going on research candidate recruitment. We did a demographic survey. The staff, based on, they put resources against it, and we gave advice on that. And we're giving advice not only on Sarah's patient lead care model that they're doing along with the Integrated Movement Disorders Program, but we actually have patient advisory board members attending and auditing and then giving direct feedback. And so what happens with this board is people are getting involved up front while they're designing things in the first place, as opposed to coming in at the end and or in the middle and saying, well, what's your advice? And then finding out that whatever is, it's all in the can and there's nothing you can do about it. Sonia, any thoughts, or Gord?
Just one thing, I kind of brushed over the website in my talk about it's a multi-step process, and we had to prepare a presentation to get approved to go start building the website, and that was it was really great how it just kind of it came together, and excited about what the product's going to be.
Yeah, so the patient advisory board gets together with the faculty, they co-create something, and then they present it to faculty at a faculty meeting, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and I think, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the same applies to the research committee in that way. We're looking at the whole process of how recruitment happens at Toronto Western and trying to see the obstacles that are there and how we as patients can advise the clinicians and the staff on maybe how to overcome those obstacles from a patient perspective. How do we recruit patients? How do we make the whole experience of being in a clinical trial at Toronto Western patient-centric and patient-friendly, taking into consideration things like logistics and how does a patient get from the front door to the clinic? Simple things like that, but which make a huge difference in the patient experience. And the staff is always so willing to learn. And that's really what's tremendous about this collaboration.
I'd like to build really quickly on that, Christian, because this is very different. This is not a patient advisory board that we've seen in our experience, and I've polled an awful lot of advocates. This is unique. We see Dr. Lang every single meeting, along with Dr. Lidstone. And while Dr. Vizjani was with us full-time, she was there every time. We see Drs. Fasano, Dr. Fox, Dr. Maris. We see Dr. Zarowski is with us almost every meeting. This is not just one faculty member shows up. They're coming and they really want to know. And boy, it's unique. And Dr. Lang is one of the top 10 most cited Parkinson's researchers in the world. He's not going to waste his time. He's got a lot of better things to do. And so we are so humbly appreciative of the opportunity to provide our input.
Can I ask you, Dr. Lang, what's in it for you?
Good question. Why do I do this? I like people. I like the idea of people involved in their own care and driving their own care. Although I do believe, maybe people won't like to hear this, I do believe that there is a role for paternalistic medicine in some respects at some times. But I think that's the minority of the time nowadays. And so it really has to be a dynamic, it has to be a team that everybody appreciates as participating. And if it's not, the experience is horrible for everybody involved, not just the patient, the doctor, and I think the quality of care and the outcomes are miserable. And so I'm committed to seeing all of this happen because I think the outcome of the patients that I care for and that I really feel strongly about is much better when we do it this way.
Terrific. All right, next question. I think we're going to stick with you, Dr. Lang. I heard of a new DA01 stem cell therapy trial in PD, Parkinson's disease, authorized by Health Canada a couple of days ago. Will this involve UHN and TWH MD Clinic?
Yes, this is a development that was based in a company that actually started in the Mars building on college and university. They are now largely based in the United States, but have a very important Canadian connection. And we, myself, particularly Dr. Andres Lozano, the head of the functional neurosurgery program at Toronto Western Hospital and UHN, we are advising the company in the development of this and will be very much involved. We'll be the lead Canadian program. And in fact, although they are starting in the United States, I think the largest part of their next phase will probably be conducted in Canada if what they're saying is true.
My understanding is, and Dr. Lang, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is it's going to be using stem cells in a safety trial, which is the first of the phases of all the trials to ensure that it's safe for patients, 10 patients. And it is essentially the premise is that the stem cells will somehow, once injected into the trial participants, may give them back their motor skills or control over their motor skills. Is that the premise here?
I think it's really very important that people understand what we mean by stem cells. Stem cells are cells that then can be directed down what we call a lineage to cause them to make a certain type of nerve cell. So we're not injecting a magical stem cell that then will go everywhere in the brain and correct every abnormality of every different type of cell. And that's what people think stem cells are going to do. It's going to be a cure-all, and everything that's wrong with Parkinson's disease is going to be rectified. No, these are stem cells that have then been directed down the line of making dopamine cells. So the advantage of using a stem cell is that you then create an unlimited supply of dopamine cells that don't come from a fetus, for example, don't come from an individual or maybe 5 or 6 individual fetuses, the way fetal transplantations were done in Parkinson's disease many years ago. So this is a cell-based therapy with dopamine cells injected into the part of the brain that is deficient of dopamine. We expect if this is going to work, it is not going to magically treat symptoms that are not responsive to dopamine replacement. And there are many, many challenges to this approach. So I think it's an important development. It is not going to be the cure. And I think it does require quite a bit of good research to look at, as you say, safety, and then moving on to see how effective it is.
I'm curious if I could poll or canvass anybody on the patient advisory board, this type of research, and it's so groundbreaking in many ways, and I know it's early and it's a safety trial first, but what does that say to you about Toronto Western, the Movement Disorders Clinic, and the people at UHN?
How about you, Sonia?
Well, it corroborates or confirms what I've always thought about UHN or Toronto Western Hospital in terms of their research. It's innovative, it's groundbreaking, and they always seem to be on top of the latest and greatest that I read about in the research community and the research news. There's been very rarely, I often will email Dr. Lang and say, have you heard about this? And he'll say, oh yeah, he'll fill me in on it. I mean, there's never been an issue that I haven't raised that I haven't gotten an answer to. So they're really on top of everything that's new, and we're gonna need that. I mean, Parkinson's disease is gonna need out of the box thinking and innovative thinking in order to come to those better treatments and a cure. And I think that that mindset is there.
Anything else, Hugh or Gord?
Gord, anything from your end?
Good.
I'll chirp in. I met Roger Barker, Dr. Roger Barker from the UK, who's doing the stem cell program with associated with the Lawrence Studer program for pluripotent cells, which are the ones that come from your arm, not from fetuses. And here we are, Toronto Western Hospital, right up with, there's only, it's 4 or 5 locations in the world doing this. Japan, here with it's BlackRock, I guess it is, and they're doing the UK and Sweden, Blue Rock. And it's amazing what they're doing. Speaking of Toronto Western Hospital, who's growing the neurons in the UK? One of Tony's postdocs, Tilo Kunath. And so as we go around the globe and we meet all these people who are leaders in the field, not only are we meeting Toronto Western Hospital faculty here, we're meeting them all over the place as this world-leading postdoc program, one of the biggest in North America that there is, sends people across the globe to be leaders in other countries.
I will add one thing as somebody who's taken part in numerous studies, most of them at the UHN. They've got amazing depth on all fields. The staff is fantastic, and the neurologists and neuroscientists. It's a pleasure to work with them, and it's pretty awe-inspiring.
I just want to make a note. Dr. Lidstone has rejoined us, and I want to tie a bow on this thinking in terms of forward-thinking, pioneering research to both of you, or one of you, whichever wants to field this. But talk to us then about the role that philanthropy plays in getting projects like this off the ground.
I love this topic, Christian. As some of you might know, we are currently funded by philanthropy. So our whole integrated program is philanthropy funded, and really it's the reason why we're able to do this really valuable work. My feeling is that philanthropy has a really important role in the initial stages of starting something new, something innovative. Those are generally very hard things to get funded through traditional medical and research channels. And though when it works and it works well, and we're hoping our model will prove this, then really there should be a role for ministry funding as well, right? In terms of operations and scaling. So I really think the role of philanthropy is critical, is pivotal, and also is really meaningful in a way that, you know, we're targeting the things that matter, that make people's lives better now. And this is a really critical role of philanthropy because the impact is really huge on the ground in the day-to-day now. And this, I think, is where most donors want to see impact. And so this is a really fantastic way to do that.
Dr. Lang, can I ask you if you have any contribution to the role of philanthropy to add here?
Well, just to reiterate, we can't do what we do without philanthropy. There is not enough money in research to provide sufficient support to drive a lot of the research programs that are being done. And certainly there is very little support for these kind of things. We hope in the long term that we will have the ability to convince the ministry to support the Integrated Movement Disorders Program, for example. But there's a chance that depending on the situation, the finances, especially coming out of COVID, that there may be a problem with that in the long run. So we literally cannot do what we do without the support of generous benefactors. And some of the names of people that have done that are things you listed earlier, Safra, Schulman, Rossi, etc. And the supporter of the Integrated Movement Disorders Program is a family that have remained anonymous. They just are very dedicated, but didn't want to be named. And they're just wonderful, wonderful people that we're very grateful to.
Absolutely.
Christian, can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd really like to emphasize that these are things that actually work, and they work now. I've spent time with Sarah's team, and they've shown me what they're doing, and they've shown me how it works. And it's new. People are not doing this in other places. They're developing new treatments that really have an impact. And, you know, I'm not going to try to talk to anybody about funding models, but if we can get this to the point where it is so compelling for early adopters in the system to then adopt it without funding because they want to get it in place and they'll find the money somewhere. That's the secret sauce to getting this going.
Great, guys. Thank you. Let's go back to viewer questions here. Are you working with other hospitals, communities to share your successes around PAD? This seems like an amazing model others should adopt. Hugh, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. That would be, we actually had, our first guest was Dr. Karen Lee, the new CEO of Parkinson Canada. And Parkinson Canada has modeled their new patient advisory council in part off of the patient advisory board for Toronto Western. They had a vision to do it themselves, and hopefully we had somewhat of an impact on how they think about how they do it. I get a very keen sense that Dr. Lee is very much aligned with the faculty at Toronto Western in her thinking. She comes from the MS world where they get a lot of results. I still remember being in the hallway speaking with Dr. Kalia about how sometimes they have MS envy because the people in MS are getting results that matter, that work now with their research. And we're just so excited that Toronto Western is doing that. We had other guests, Annabelle from the Neuro in Montreal, and we've had some other people in, and we're focusing first though on Toronto Western Hospital, movement disorders, and its families and patients. And then as we do this, we'll help other people out, but our first and foremost is to stick to our mission and get the job done that we're there for with our faculty.
All right, next question. How can existing patients at the Movement Disorders Clinic at Toronto Western Hospital request to join the Integrated Movement Disorders Program? Is this on a referral basis through the neurologist or a waiting list? Thank you.
I can probably answer that one. So as I said in the previous speaker series, this is still in its pilot stage. So the patients that we evaluate and take into the program are existing patients at Toronto Western in the Movement Disorders Clinic there. And so this is a referral basis. You can, if that applies to you, you can ask your movement disorders neurologist for consideration to be referred into the IMDP. Again, right now there is no treatment streams or therapy streams. We're focusing mostly on integrated assessment and evaluation. That will all be coming out in the next 2 years.
Terrific, thank you. Next question. I was curious how mental health treatment is integrated into your care model, especially when doctor-patient interactions are done remotely.
Yeah, so I can answer that one again. So mental health is one of the major pillars of our program. We recognize the critical importance of identifying and treating anxiety, depression, coping, grief, all of these things that are a very big part of Parkinson's and make probably the biggest impact on quality of life in terms of the research. There's actually a really huge, long legacy of telehealth in psychiatry. So in fact, the virtual care lends itself very well to doing psychiatric visits and psychiatric assessments and therapy. We've started a rapid access nurse-led mental health clinic for our PD patients where anybody who has these concerns can be seen by her within less than a month. And this has proved to be quite successful since starting it in September. We've treated over 50 patients in this model, and we've avoided psychiatrist referrals and long wait lists that come with that. So that's one way that we're doing it. The other way is embedding a psychiatrist with me in the clinic and the physio together in how we assess and evaluate patients. And part of this actually is making patients aware of how these mood changes and symptoms of anxiety actually present in the body, because a lot of the time we don't recognize it, but it's there. It plays a major role in tremor, it plays a major role in freezing of gait. These are all things, though, that we need to show patients as well. So those are some of the things that we're working on right now.
That's terrific. Okay, next question. Where can we sign up for the PAB newsletter?
I can answer that one again. If you may as well just knock them all off the list, Christian. So this is sent to all of our patients who we have email addresses for us. So if you haven't provided consent to our admins to use your email address, please do so, and you'll be automatically included on the next newsletter. They come out quarterly. So just mention it to your neurologist or the fellow who sees you, and then they should be able to add your name to the list. It's also available on social media, and I believe it's posted on our website, but I have to confirm that actually. I'm not sure if you know that, Hugh. I'm not sure.
And the website is?
The Toronto Western Hospital Movement Disorders Clinic website. We can perhaps post that in the chat.
Yeah, it's in the patient materials. There will be a link. There's a link in there to each of the winter and the spring.
Terrific. All right, another newsletter question. The newsletter is wonderful. However, older patients with PD who aren't able to use computers easily would benefit from a newsletter that could be printed and read. Any chances you could develop that?
Yes, definitely. We do recognize that the e-format, the electronic format, doesn't serve all of our patient population well. During COVID, it's been kind of the path of least resistance, and it also lets us embed a lot of links and videos and content that wouldn't sit in a printed newsletter. When the pandemic is over, we will be printing some copies and have them available in our waiting room for patients when they come. We just can't, for infection purposes, we aren't able to do that right now. We could certainly explore down the road if we have funding, because right now this is a completely unfunded project. If we did have funding, we'd be able to print out some copies and send them to people, more like a magazine. But that may happen down the road, but right now we don't have that ability.
Yeah, we should remind people, this is all sweat equity, no funding, mounting this PAB. So hats off to all of you for putting this together. Next question. My dad's home care nurse told my mom that Parkinson's is an autoimmune disorder, and therefore my dad should not receive the COVID vaccine. This doesn't seem correct to me. Please advise. Thank you. Dr. Lang?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll take this and the one at the bottom because they both relate to the cause of Parkinson's. The answer is no. Parkinson's disease is not an autoimmune disorder, and the nurse that's been speaking to your mom is incorrect and providing incorrect information. As I mentioned earlier, there is a role of inflammation in Parkinson's and probably in all neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and many of the other degenerations that we deal with that often present like Parkinson's. But this is not truly an autoimmune phenomenon, and there is no contraindication whatsoever for someone with Parkinson's to receive the COVID vaccine. And in fact, there's probably more reason for people with Parkinson's to receive the COVID vaccine. Although the government hasn't been prioritizing patients with Parkinson's, I think they are saying now that patients with neurological disorders might get up to a front row in the waiting list. So you just might ask about that, but there is no reason not to, certainly, and there's very good reason to receive it. There are genes that cause Parkinson's disease. Most patients do not have a single gene that causes Parkinson's. Occasionally, we find families with very clear genetic causes, but we do feel that there are important composite genetic causes. It's not just a single gene in most people. It's probably many genes in combination, and then possibly, depending on what genes you have in combination, many environmental factors then that may play a role, and then genes that may protect as well. So it's a very complicated mix of environment and genes. Yes, people with a family history of Parkinson's are at a slightly higher risk of developing Parkinson's, but unless the family history is very strong and you have multiple members of the family, the increased risk is not substantial.
Very good. Next question. I can see there is representation of patients who have PD. There are other neurological conditions. Will patients who suffer from those will have representation in the PAB? Hugh?
Yes, I'll give you a little rundown. Today we have, as you noticed, Parkinson's. We also have multiple system atrophy represented, ataxia, dystonia, and functional neurological disorders, which are the software problems that happen and are often carry-alongs with the disease you have. They come with the package. Over and above that, we are looking for diversity on this board. We want more people from the other half of the movement disorder spectrum that the clinic takes care of. We want more people who represent the new Canadian population, whether it's first, second, or third generation. We want more people who are late onset Parkinson's disease, as this disease in Canada, due to our longevity, has really pushed to having much higher prevalence rates in the older age groups as we age. And so we're looking for all those types of people, and because the patients know all sorts of stuff that we haven't thought of, and so do the family members.
I'm going to make this our last question, but quickly, Hugh, someone has asked for your email address again.
Hugh Johnston, CA, all one word, at simpatico.ca. And my old business life, I had a website, hughjohnston.com. You can also reach me through that one as well.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make this the last question because we are coming to the top of the hour. Where are the biggest needs in the patient care model?
So from my perspective, although we are a pilot program in terms of the specifics of how we're executing this, the biggest needs that exist now that will be highly relevant to building into the model are around funding for the rehab elements. So physiotherapy and especially psychological therapy. These are not OHIP covered. They are very difficult for patients to access in terms of trained providers. In our model, we're going to provide the training, but we need to have therapists who are trained, who are part of our group, who are executing so we can treat more and more patients and get out there. There's only 4 of us in our program at Toronto Western Hospital. That is not enough, especially with the numbers of Parkinson's rising by 2030. So those are existing needs now that could be folded into the model. In fact, we're working to do that. So I would say those are probably the 2 biggest needs.
Sarah, is it just rehab and clinical and mental health service, or do they feed on each other? Are you finding that to do the rehab, you have to have the mental health treatment because it's driving the movement behavior?
So I think, I think, my thoughts on that. There's a really interesting and important intersection between mental health and physio, and especially in a condition like Parkinson's. They work together. And if those factors are identified and treated together, the outcomes we predict are going to be much better. It's not just putting a patient on a treadmill and saying, go for it, or teaching someone how to do transfers. It's actually learning about the ways that our brain works, how anxiety can play a role into this, how motivation can play a role into this, and how to manage these symptoms as a chronic illness that can confer a much better quality of life. It's giving people knowledge and power. So all of those things come together in a really nice way that's not been looked at anywhere else. So we're quite interested and proud of this.
And I just highlight, Sarah knows this exactly, but I think in response to that earlier question, everything she just says applies to all of the movement disorders we deal with. And so we recognize, and she's been the first to point out, that this needs to be a model that addresses our entire patient population, not just a single disorder.
Thanks so much. And listen, this was a fast hour. We've come to the end of our time. I want to thank all of you. First, Dr. Tony Lang, Director of the Edmund J. Saffer Program in Parkinson's disease, the Morton and Gloria Shulman Movement Disorders Clinic, and the Rossi Progressive Nuclear Palsy Center. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us, Tony. And Dr. Sarah Lidstone, neurologist, director of UHN's Integrated Movement Disorders Program, and clinician investigator at the Krembil Research Institute. Thanks for joining us. I know you had to leave to go take care of a patient, so thank you for coming back for the Q&A.
Thank you. The patient's much better, actually, so I'm very happy. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
And to our patient advisory board members, Chair Hugh Johnston, co-chair Dr. Sonia Mather, and Chair of Communications Gordon Myers, thank you for your insights into this innovative model that's critical to patient engagement, and we wish you all success.
Wonderful. I would also like to thank Sonia. She's my chair mentor and is teaching me how to do this. She comes from many, many years on the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Patient Council is the co-chair of that as well. And Gord gets stuff done. You don't even know it's getting done, and it gets done. It's fabulous.
My inspiration, Hugh.
Thanks to Hugh for his wonderful leadership.
It's terrific, and it's a great model for all patients in terms of advocacy and advice. So thank you to all of you for taking on this role. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. We will be returning with another edition of the Movement Disorder Virtual Speaker Series this fall. So keep looking at your inbox. You'll be getting some news in your email in the months to come. This event has been recorded and will be up on the UHN Foundation YouTube channel right after this live stream is over. And if you are in any way moved to donate to the Movement Disorders Research Program, you'll find a link at the bottom of the window, or at the bottom of this streaming window, that will direct you to our donation page. Your support is very much appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Keep practicing physical distancing, keep washing your hands, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.